Hello, my name's Harold Halfdane and welcome to Archaeological Minecraft. I'm a former archaeologist who enjoys playing Minecraft and thought it would be fun to combine the two. In today's episode, we'll be talking about dating, specifically dendrochronology or tree ring dating, and radiocarbon or C14 dating. There are two main forms of dating that archaeologists use: relative dating and absolute dating. An example of relative dating would be using stratigraphy, or in other words, the various layers of dirt at an archaeological site to tell how old something is, in relation to objects found in other layers of dirt. Typically, the topmost layers will be the youngest, and the layers below it being older. Dendrochronology and radiocarbon dating are two forms of what are called absolute dating techniques, meaning they can provide a specific, i.e. absolute, date, or date range. Let's jump right into it and start by talking about dendrochronology. Let's look at this oak log. You can see here is the center, and there are concentric rings spreading outward to the outside of the trunk where the bark is. The center is where the youngest rings are, and the rings closest to the bark are where the oldest rings are located and correlate to when the tree was a sapling. Each ring has two parts. The lighter parts correspond to the spring and summer season, when the tree does most of its growth, and the darker rings correspond to the fall and winter, when the tree loses its leaves and hunkers down through the cold winter snows, and thus doesn't grow much. While you can't tell this on a Minecraft oak log, where all the rings are the same size, in real life, the rings of a tree vary year to year. Let's quickly replicate that with some Minecraft blocks. In the years where the tree is getting all the nourishment it needs, like good sun and the right amount of water, you can see that the light part of the ring is very broad. In other years where the tree doesn't get these things, it's narrower. What's super cool and why tree ring dating works is that in a given geographical area, you can see similar growth patterns across the trees from the same species. Therefore, you don't need a single tree that's lived for 10,000 years to be able to date a tree back that far. All you need are the trees that overlap their lives over that 10,000 years, and you can compare the growth patterns between the trees. So, taking this back to archaeology, if you can find a beam or a post on an archaeological site, an archaeologist is able to look at the rings, run that through computerized databases for all the trees of that species that match with the ones found at the archaeological site, and thus be able to tell exactly when that site dates to. Amazingly, this sometimes can be as accurate as a single year. Those computerized databases are called master sequences and exist for various tree species all around the world. For example, the California bristlecone pine has one that goes back to 6,700 BC. One for European oak trees in Germany goes back to around 8,500 BC. One in England goes back 7,000 years, and another one in Ireland goes back 5,400. As cool as dendrochronology is, not every archaeological site is lucky enough to find a wood sample that can be so easily matched, and that's where radiocarbon dating comes in. Everyone should remember carbon as an element on the periodic table from school. Nearly 99% of the carbon that exists on Earth is what's called carbon-12, meaning it has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. Carbon-12 is a stable isotope, meaning it will sit there and not change over time. There is another form of carbon that exists in trace amounts called carbon-14, which has 6 protons, but it has 8, not 6, neutrons. 6 plus 8, that equals 14, thus carbon-14. And this version of carbon is not a stable isotope. Instead, it's radioactive, with a half-life of 5,730 plus or minus 40 years. I hear you asking, Halfdan, well, that's all well and good, but how does this work? Good question. As plants breathe in carbon dioxide, trace amounts of that carbon is C14. As animals eat the plants, they too absorb the trace amounts of carbon-14. When a plant or animal dies, they no longer are taking in any new sources of carbon-14. From there, the radiocarbon C14 decays over time so that every about 5,730 years, half of that C14 decays and becomes C12. Scientists are then able to detect how much C14 is still decaying and are able to then work out how old that piece of organic material is. Notice I said organic material because that's important. Remember how C14 is absorbed, i.e. plants, animals. So you can't radiocarbon date rocks or metal. You can only radiocarbon date organic material such as plants and animal remains. There's another catch to radiocarbon dating, which is the amount of C14 in the atmosphere has changed over time and isn't consistent. It also isn't uniformly distributed. For example, C14 tends to be in higher concentrations in the deep ocean. And so, if your archaeological sample is of a bone from a person or animal that mostly ate deep water fish, that will alter how much C14 is in the sample, and so that's something that archaeologists and scientists need to adjust for. That brings me back to how radiocarbon dating and dendrochronology work together. Because the amount of C14 in the atmosphere has changed over time, archaeologists need to calibrate their radiocarbon dates against the tree ring master sequences. What scientists and archaeologists have done is radiocarbon date material from known dates from tree rings, and now that there's such a huge database of known C14 ranges matching with known exact tree ring dates, it's possible to calibrate radiocarbon dates more precisely to the C14 shown to be present in the atmosphere at that time in history. Periodically, new calibration results are released as the databases get larger and larger. I remember back when I was working as an archaeologist, one of my jobs one winter was to go back through all the radiocarbon dates for a state governmental institution and recalibrate them so we could publish the updated dates for that state's archaeological sites. Let's bring this all together. Let's say you found a shaft from a wooden tool on your archaeological site. It is possible you could tell how old that tool is from the rings from the wood in the tool, or if not, you could, because it's organic material, radiocarbon date some of the wood and thus be able to tell how old that tool is. That can give you a date range not just for that specific tool, but that could provide a date for that layer of the soil in your archaeological site that the tool was found in. Then, using relative dating for the layers of stratigraphy on your archaeological site, you should be able to tell the relative age of the other layers on your dig site. The ones above that tool being younger, and those layers below that tool being older. So, if you've ever wondered how archaeologists know when something dates to, hopefully you'll have a bit more of an answer. Sorry this wasn't so much of a building episode, but as I've been tossing around various dates in other episodes, I thought it might be good to spend an episode covering how some of the ways archaeologists know when something dates to. If you've liked this episode or have any feedback you want to pass along, please pop them into the comments below. Like, subscribe, do all the things, and have a great day. See you in the next episode. Well, there you go, dating. I'm such a dork.